Hello all, my name is Noah and welcome back to the 1980 More podcast where we talk about all things 1984. Today we have an extra special episode where we will be conducting a Q&A with the author of a 1984 prequel fan fiction. And who is this author, you ask? Well, it's me. That's right, I'll be answering 5 questions sent by you guys, my wonderful listeners. In case you haven't read my fanfic or you fell asleep watching cat videos and woke up to this, let me provide you with a brief synopsis. The story takes place 10 years before the events of Orwell's story, when Winston had just freshly been hired at the Ministry of Truth, and he's excited about this job and has no ill will towards the government yet. He meets O'Brien for the first time, where he is asked to go as an undercover agent and see if a man named Edmund Thomas is actually part of the Brotherhood, like O'Brien suspects he is. In his conversation with Edmund, Winston finds out that he is indeed a part of the Brotherhood, but decides that Edmund is a good man and doesn't deserve to be punished for his political beliefs. So he lies to O'Brien, telling him that Edmund is not a part of the Brotherhood, and it turns out this whole operation was just a test to see if Winston would remain loyal to Big Brother or not, and he failed. Winston is then tortured until he can't remember anything of Edmund or O'Brien, though the event does subconsciously affect his mind to make him more aware of the tyranny of his government, and even if he does not know that that was the event that caused it. Now that that's out of the way, without any further ado, I will jump into the main thing that we will be doing in this episode, the Q&A. The first question that comes in: how did you develop the characters in your narrative? Were they inspired by real people or entirely fictional? Well, I just like the idea of Winston being a young man with the world ahead of him and a carefree, possibly even naive mind, and watching that develop into the more paranoid and secretive Winston that we see in 1984. As for Edmund, he was just kind of created on the spot and acts more as a plot device for Winston's character than anything, and it doesn't really matter for him to have too complex of a personality of his own, since he was just putting on a show for Winston anyways. Edmund Thomas probably isn't even his real name. And O'Brien, I decided to keep largely the same as his role in the original story, because I feel that his character fits better as a symbol of Big Brother, and him getting character development of his own would kind of destroy the point of him, in my opinion. The next question: were there any challenges or obstacles that you faced while writing this narrative, and how did you overcome them? Well, initially I faced the problem of Winston having no real motive or reason to tell on Edmund. But what I did for that was just add a couple of paragraphs into Winston and Edmund's talk over lunch, and it made it much more believable. The next question: what universal theme did you want your readers to take away from your narrative? How did you work to convey that universal theme to your audience? Well, that's a good question. What I did was, the theme that I was really going for is that naivety can backfire, and that Winston being anxious all the time in 1984, for as annoying as it might be when you read it, is actually a good thing, because if he isn't careful enough, these are the kind of things that can happen. And the way that I conveyed this theme is by having a huge setup and reveal, and it seems like everything is good for Winston, but then right when he least expects it, bam, he falls right into a trap. The next question that comes in is: how different from or similar to your original selected narrative text was your fanfiction narrative, and why did you make that choice? Well, I tried to keep the structure pretty similar to the original story. Reason being that I decided to keep it with the same character in the same setting working the same job is because the world of 1984 is very rigid, with people being repressed and treated like sheep. So the idea that just 10 years ago Winston would be in some other role makes it seem like he has a lot of freedom, when in reality he does not, and will probably be working the same job until he dies, or until Big Brother deems him no longer useful. And the final question that I have to answer for you guys today is: what were some important or meaningful moments in the narrative that resonated with me personally, and why were these moments significant to me? Well, that's a great question. I personally was very happy with the end of my story. I just like how well it sets up 1984 and how the story is totally plausible given the circumstances. And I also really particularly liked how it sets up O'Brien, with Winston only remembering the feelings that he had surrounding this event and not any of the actual details themselves. It makes perfect sense why Winston just has an innate feeling that O'Brien isn't what he seems that he is and why he's an important person. And of course, in 1984, he takes that as O'Brien being a part of the Brotherhood, which obviously we know he is not. And that's going to be it for this episode today. Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast once again, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.